Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the Lambom Show. My name is Lambert Mbom. I'm a freelance journalist based in Washington, D.C. I'm very delighted today to be talking about some very important aspect of our community life, something which all of us are practically engaged in, and it's going to be education, but not your regular kind of education. It's going to be about empowerment, empowerment of women, empowerment of girls. And it is not just your regular kind of empowerment. And strangely, I am the one hosting a show about empowerment of women. I'm very delighted, very grateful for the opportunity. And I'm grateful because I'm a proud father of two young girls, Kayla, who is 10, and Rita, who just turned 8, and the proud brother of three sisters, all of them matured women. And I'm sure they would be delighted to contribute. I am the friend of many, many great women, people who have struggled through life, people who have, attained heights and want to impact others. And it is through this form of relationship, this friendship, this constant searching that I was privileged to meet a pace setter, a great mentor, a great woman. If you have never known her, please look for her. Dr. Lauren Niba. I've met her just for, I think, over 6 weeks. It has been very transformational. She's the only person who has appeared on this show. I think this is going to be her fourth time. And today, we're not talking about 25 push ups for 25 days, which would be a great topic to continue talking about. We are talking about a foundation, the KUA Foundation. The KUA Foundation is the product, that is the gift that Dr. Lauren is giving to the world as a woman. I don't know much about the KUA Foundation. I'm here to learn. And also because I'm here to learn, I'm going to be asking the questions as a student. I want to welcome Dr. Lauren Niba and Ms. Praxedes Banseka. Ms. Praxedes is actually coming to us from Douala in Yaoundé, in Cameroon, which is quite extraordinary for somebody to be on this show from Cameroon. So I'm grateful and I'm humbled, thankful to all of you, for making the time to come on this show this Saturday morning, this Saturday afternoon. Good morning, Dr. Lauren. Good afternoon, Mr. Praxedes Banseka. Over to you guys.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Lambert. Hello, everyone in the US. I know we have quite a few people watching from Cameroon as well, and with my Paysetter sister Prax calling in from Douala. So, hello. It truly is an honor to be here. Lambert, thank you so much for giving us this platform. As you mentioned, I've been on your show before, and every time it's been very productive. So you have this wonderful platform that gives us an opportunity to really spotlight a lot of the positive things that are happening in our community, a lot of the positive developments. And so it is truly an honor to be on here to talk about the KUA Women's Foundation, which is really an organization. It's a non-profit organization that is really focused on educational and professional empowerment of girls and young women in Africa. So we're going to talk about our programs today. I am the president and the founder of the organization. I am also by training a food scientist. So I started out my career, I have a PhD in food chemistry, and I started out my career in academia as a professor. And then I had the opportunity to go to business school. And I currently work for a Fortune 500 company as director of global food systems knowledge management. And so based on my professional and career experience and educational experience, I really got this vision to start this foundation to see if we can really build a pipeline of future talent. So today I'm on here with Ms. Praxedes Banseka, who is one of our board members, extremely dynamic woman, and has led programs for us and projects for us. And I'm going to hand it over to Praxedes, and she's also a Paysetter, so my classmate from Lourdes. I'll hand it over to Praxedes to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Praxedes Banseka, presently in Douala, Cameroon. I'm a finance person. That is my career as at now. I started off as an agricultural economics. That was my training. I did some teaching, and I have been with the credit union movement for the past 23 years. So practically, I've been in finance. Like Lauren said, she's my classmate. We've been through a lot together. And I think in the course of my career also, I've worked in a setup which is male dominated. When you have to ride bike to your place of work, of course, you realize that you don't have too many women in that domain. And I think that made me to start thinking much, how do we encourage more women? In the course of my career, I've had to mentor a lot of young women because I want them to fit into careers or into positions that have been exclusively used up by men. So in Kowa Women, we have been doing a lot of activities, and in the course of the show, we will share with you what we are doing in the Kowa Women's Foundation.
So, for the sake of, I really want to say that I'm not a lesson. I could never have gone to Lourdes, and I don't have any particular affiliation apart from the fact that my three sisters and my mother are lessons. I just happen to be along the pathway of many lessons. That's why my show is always made up of lessons, and I'm very grateful. It is a good thing, isn't it? And just before we get into it, Dr. Lauren, you already laid out the foundation, but tell me, how did Our Lady of Lourdes College prepare you for this mission before we get into the foundation itself?
Excellent question, Lambert. And first of all, you have an affinity for lessons because you're a Chesan, right? So Chesans have always liked lessons. So I think that's the secret. So if you're wondering why, but what I have to say is that, obviously Lourdes is an all-girls school. And those were really our formative years, right? So I was 10 years old when I went to Lourdes, and 15 when I left, right? So those are, looking back, those are really your formative years. That's when your character really begins to form. That is really when you concretize your values. And fortunately, as a school that was run by the Rosary Sisters, I tell people, we had a class on morality when I was in Form 5, right? So even at that early stage as a teenager, we were already learning a lot about life philosophy and really making conscientious choices and things like purpose and really clarity around things that drive you beyond just an education. But I have to say, some of the key things, 3 key things that I took away from my education at Lourdes. The first one was really having a faith-based spiritual foundation. So it always helps when, I think it was President Barack Obama who said, as part of his conversion journey, people would always ask him, where is your faith coming from, right? Where is your belief coming from? Because it's got to come from somewhere. So having that really faith-based foundation, and obviously I came from a Christian home, was baptized very young, but having a set of values and sort of having direction really sets you up for life. And a lot of faith-based people will tell you, you learn about the gifts of the Spirit. So you have this whole foundation where things have meaning beyond just in of themselves, right? Everything you do has a meaning. The second takeaway was really the structure. So when I became a college professor, my first job after my PhD was a college professor. And I was very surprised to learn that there's students who've never learned how to study, right? They've never had the discipline to sit down and study for 3 hours because nobody taught them. So those are some of the things we learned in Lourdes. There was a lot of structure. Obviously, as a teenager, you push back against the structure. You think it's restrictive. But later on in life, you realize that, having a routine to your day, being able to plan and being able to map out when it's study time, when it's rest time, when it's workout time, those are values that, I think all of us still carry up until today. And finally, the biggest one for me was standing in my power as a woman. So when you go to an all-girls school, everybody in leadership roles is a woman. So it never occurs to you that, when I left Lourdes and now moved into other spaces, it surprised me, right? It wasn't and maybe people find this strange, but as you know, and with boys, it's the same. Studies have been done where, if you have an all-boys community, when women come in, people change their behavior because they're now conscious of women in the room. it's the same thing, right? Women, if you have an all-women community, if they're now serving on a committee with a man, especially if they're the minority, then they start declaring. We see it a lot in science and in STEM. That's one of the things we're going to talk about with COA, where women don't want to show that they are smarter in science or smarter in maths. So, one of the things Lourdes taught me and just became a part of me was having women in leadership roles. So everybody who was a leader was a woman. They stood in their power. They claimed it. They led with confidence and with vision. And that's something that I've carried with me. So it was a phenomenal foundation, phenomenal life foundation, not just educational, but spiritual and professional as well. And I think it's one of the reasons why I have someone like my classmate, Praxedis, and a lot of my Pacesetter classmates that are part of this. They see this vision for the foundation and are helping us to execute on it, right? Because we believe in leadership and we have the same values.
So let me pose the same question to you, Praxedis. I guess you are going to tell me that she has said all that you wanted to say, but let's hear it in your own voice.
Okay, your guess might be wrong, but in addition to some of what she has already said, I take two things that I came back from Lourdes with. Standing on your feet and being able to do what you can. We're made to understand that you can go to any height. No restriction, no thinking that this person is beyond me, So you are like ready to dare and do everything. And when we came out with that foundation, it's like, you don't think that there's anybody that is beyond you. Whatever is worth trying, you go ahead and try. And like I said, in my career, when I started work, one of the first things I had to do was to ride a bike. And then in Bamenda, we did not even have all these Chinese bikes and whatever. I was one of the few women riding a bike, and you could always have women, young children exclaiming, "Oh, it's a woman." They were surprised. But it is from my foundation in Lourdes that I knew that I can do anything. I just need to make up my mind that I want to do it, and I will do it. And then secondly, which is still linked, we didn't have to wait for anybody to clear our schoolyard. So it is not like women walk with hoes and the men walk with cutlasses. Everything, whether it was the clearing or climbing on whatever, we had to do it ourselves. So I think till this day, I do things myself. I don't wait for anybody to do. And it is all thanks to the foundation that got from those. Adding to the morals, the moral aspect is very, very important, because the sisters who trained us then made us know that virtue had no value. You had to tell the truth at all times. You had to stand for what is right, even if you are alone. And I think that has played a big role in my career up to date.
I think just listening to both of you describe those wonderful experiences gives me a vision of why the foundation is set out that way. Because you talked about empowerment, you talked about self-development, okay? You talk about leadership, okay? The one thing that you have not talked about, which I'm curious about, is Our Lady of Lourdes College had no high school. But then for somebody like you, Dr. Lauren, you went on to be an expert in the sciences. How did that happen? And now you want to also introduce, you are trying to help women take up that space in the sciences. Your friend Praxedis went ahead into finance. Maybe that's why you have the business aspect of it, which is money. Okay. But then that part I can understand. The one that I don't understand is how you veered off into science.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that, I think education and excellence in education goes beyond just the classroom, right? And it ties into some of the values that both Praxedis and myself have shared, because you're absolutely right. First of all, we had science teachers, right? So the fact that it was an all-girls school, I did science in the GCE. We had the whole range that was available to everybody. And so I went to high school in St. Augustine. Again, I went to a very structured, boarding school, Catholic boarding school. So again, more structure as I progressed. But I think that, sort of having that foundation where, again, you have a routine and you have structure around how you study, and you're not intimidated by anything. Just like Praxis said, right? So in our physics class, we were all girls, right? So physics you didn't think at that stage that physics is something that a girl shouldn't do. or math or any of the sciences. So that's really, that's really something that helped me, and that stayed with me all through high school. In university, I studied biochemistry. Again, very few girls in our class. In my PhD program, again, the majority was still male. So, that foundation, even outside of the classroom, the fact that you have the confidence and you have the discipline and you're not intimidated by studying any particular subject or restricting yourself around what you can become in future. A lot of those values are actually very helpful, and those are some of the things that helped me to explore a career in science, and now a career in management and leadership as well.
So again, you set up something very good there for us to talk about. I mean, in terms of there were very few girls when you went to the sciences, isn't it? That is the problem you are seeking. Core Foundation is setting out to solve. Why is that? Why is that a problem? Why is it that there are very few girls in the sciences?
Yeah, so there is this saying, which I'm sure many people have heard, that it is very difficult to become what you haven't seen, right? So, that's the challenge we have with women in science, with women in leadership, because a lot of times, and it's not the case for everybody, but a lot of times it's very difficult for people to visualize a role where they haven't seen somebody who looks like them in that role. And so if girls grow up and they do not see a lot of female scientists, or if the majority of their doctors are male, and again, it is not a problem, right? We do want, we want men who are successful. We have a lot of men who are part of the Kowa Women's Foundation. But it also helps when women are able to see role models. They're able to see women succeeding, women who are rounded and they contribute to society, and they have a family, but they're also successful as scientists. That is very helpful. So that is really one of the issues. A lot of young girls just haven't seen that, or even if they've seen it, again, they've seen those women in minority roles where they've probably seen more male doctors than female doctors, or they've seen more male scientists than female scientists. A lot of their science teachers may have been men. That's one of it. And the data actually shows that all over the world, in developing countries, especially in Africa and in Asia, but all over the world, even in this country, as you go higher in education, women fall further behind in the sciences. So we have a lot of focus on primary education, on elementary education, which is very, very important. It's very important to get girls to go to school. And there's a lot of international efforts on making sure that at the primary and elementary school level, the girl child goes to school. But there's also this hidden problem that is not as obvious, which is that as you're getting into tertiary education, there's a lot of data that shows that as you go into high school and as you're going into university, and also translates into the career, women start falling further behind, in the sciences. So you don't see as many female engineers. That's another really great field. If I ask anybody, tell me how many female engineers you know, there's probably not a lot. There's probably not a lot, right? So there's certain fields that people just associate with men, and we just take it for granted, right? So if you're recruiting, I always talk about the fact that whenever I interview people for certain roles, I can already predict who's going to show up, right? There are very few times when it's for a scientific technical role, there are very few women who are going to show up. So right now, just structurally and psychologically and culturally, it's not that there are barriers, but we really have to enable and empower and encourage women to sort of really start stretching and looking beyond. And we actually have to also encourage women who are in leadership roles or who are successful to be really more visible and to mentor and to help and to encourage a lot of the younger women as well.
So same question for you, Praxidis. You moved on to do finance, isn't it? I'm sure it was an easier path. I mean, I know you said you started off as an agricultural economist, isn't it? That is more something that you would have been used to. But this whole thing about women lacking in the sciences, engineering, and all that, what do you think accounts for that? And I love the way Dr. Lauren put it, isn't it? You can't get into something if you have not visualized it. If you have not seen role models in that, you now just presume that this path, and even when you guys said in your physics class, because you were in Rhodes, they were all girls, isn't it? But then after that, what happened? You moved up from the physics and then moved to finance. What took you to that path? Because that may be the reason why many people are not getting into the sciences.
That interesting question. I think, like Lauren said, somehow we all moved to St. Augustine's College. And at that time, St. Augustine's had a high school only for sciences. So in high school, I actually did biology, chemistry, mathematics, and geology. So when I left high school, I went to university. I somehow switched over to the Faculty of Agriculture, where you did a lot of sciences, and then I chose the economics option, and that is how I started diverting to finance. But of course, finance and accounting, that's another very challenging area, because I've observed a lot of women, especially young girls, everybody who is going into the business domain wants to take management, wants to take marketing.
Yeah.
And then when the job opportunities come up, it is more of accounting. And when you ask the questions, they are like, accounting is difficult, because even with the economics, as you go higher in economics, there's a lot more of mathematics. So I wouldn't say it wasn't an easier path to choose. It was another challenging area. But I think in my university days, we had a good number of women in my class, so it wasn't the same experience with Lauren. But as I got into the professional field, as you grow up, you realize there are fewer women. For example, I've been network operations manager in Camcool. In a management team of 6, we have 1 woman. So that tells you the representation of women at higher levels of management. If you look at, there are also many organizations, the higher you go, you realize the number of women becomes fewer. But it is like I said, I like to mentor younger women and to make them realize that you can be whatever you want to be. There, you see a lot of them at a young age with a lot of potential, and you're asking yourself, why don't you go here? And talking about young women, in my experience, it is not only the young women that need to be mentored. I've seen mature women who are elected. You go to a credit union general meeting, there is an election, and somebody says, I think that this woman can do it. And she's like, no, I'm not sure I can do it. Why are you not sure? If somebody else thinks you can do it, why do you think you can't do it? So also it is about mentoring women in all domains. You have women who are already mothers who can still go to school. So it is a matter of getting women realize their potential and use that potential to the fullest.
Right.
Yeah, if I could just add something, to what Praxis said so eloquently. So finance is actually a very technical and very scientific field. I think when we say sciences, people think about like the traditional sciences in Cameroon. But if you look at financial organizations all over the world, you need to be very analytical. It's still very male dominated. It's a very, it's a field that is often challenging for women because you work long hours, you travel. And so we really want to encourage women to look at, I have an MBA in finance. Because science leadership and finance management, in order for you to get into a leadership role, a lot of times people want to know that you know science, but can you manage a project? If they give you $1 million to help create a vaccine, can you make management decisions? And a lot of times you need a financial analytical brain to be able to write a business plan. So when we talk about science, don't just restrict it to the science as we know in Cameroon, but a lot of the analytical mathematical fields like accounting, finance, are very, very important, and we don't have enough women in those fields. Those fields still tend to be very male-dominated. It's very cutthroat. Think about Wall Street. There's a certain kind of persona that people associate with being in finance. And so for that reason, it often intimidates women sometimes. So we do want to encourage women to think about that fields, those fields. Again, that's why Praxis brings incredible value. Every project we've done that she's managed, it's so professionally run because she's a finance expert, So I think that's very important for us to also add to the discussion.
Right. So let's get to what we're supposed to be talking about today, which is the KUA Women's Foundation. And Dr. Lauren, it's interesting listening to you. That's why I always want to just stay on, isn't it? Because you started off your career as a professor. You were teaching in a university.
correct.
Then you transitioned into this business world. Yeah. And now I'm wondering, KUA Foundation, by the way, I've looked at the term. I'm wondering, KUA, why didn't you use some other maybe familiar term? Why KUA? How did you come about the foundation? Let me pack those two, then we can take it from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you're going to learn a Swahili word today. So the name of the foundation, KUA, actually comes from the Swahili word Kuwa Wezeshi. And Kuwa Wezeshi in Swahili means to enable or to empower. So I thought it was a word that really captures the vision and the mission of the organization, because it is not about giving people fish. It's about teaching people how to fish, right? It's about enabling people, empowering people who already have innate talent and innate ability, and just providing the right conditions and the right support and the right guidance and making them feel empowered to reach their potential. So that's how we arrived at the name. I also just think it's a very catchy name, right? I could have used a different language, but I loved it, when I got to know about it in Swahili. And that's really the essence of the foundation. Our motto is really empowering African girls, in science, business, and leadership. And so all of our programs are really geared towards, what are some of the structural things that we can do for these specific areas, right? So we're very defined. It's really about educational and professional and career empowerment. The field of women's empowerment is huge, as you know. There's all kinds of challenges that women face. But we think that if we're focused and we identify this particular area, which, as I mentioned, as girls go higher post-secondary, high school, university, and even young graduates, right? In Cameroon, you have a lot of, young university graduates. And as Praxe again so eloquently talked about, even older women who have a lot of potential. They run households very well. They run Jaggi groups very well. But they've just never really had the opportunity to get the skills or to get the guidance or to get the support to step up into a leadership role and really, really be able to make change. So that's really the vision of KUA. We really look at, what is it that, we can, we find people, we find their potential, we find what they're doing and find ways to be able to support them. We provide educational programs where, people can learn about leadership. Because as I said, it's great to be a scientist, but you also have to understand how to leverage that science to have an impact. If you're a chemist, yeah, it's great to be a chemist in the lab, but how do you become the director of that lab? You have to be able to develop leadership skills. How do you manage your budget? You have to be able to have analytical financial skills. So those are some of the things that we talk about in the KUA Women's Foundation.
So just tell me, did you just sit one day and all of a sudden you just said KUA Foundation and like God the KUA Foundation and so it was? What motivated you and how did you get about this? How long has KUA Foundation been in existence?
Well, so yes, absolutely. The Holy Spirit did move, to your point about did God have anything to do with it? Absolutely, inspired by the Spirit. But in terms of the journey, so KUA Foundation was actually launched in June of last year. So we've just been around for a little bit over a year. But in terms of how how this came to reality and how this came to fruition, in my career, I'm very fortunate that I've had a cross-functional career, right? So I've had a career that obviously spans two fields that a lot of times people do not associate. And through that process, I learned a lot. So I worked with, a lot of different groups. I had the opportunity right from when I was a graduate student at the University of Maryland to sit and interview panels, right? Because, being a public school, they always needed to have a representative interviewing panel. And so I had the opportunity to sit on a lot of panels that interviewed professors and interviewed candidates who were coming in. And so I really got visibility into, who are the gaps, right? Where do you never see Black women or even see Black people? So this started very early for me. And then, as you know, as a professor, I ran a research lab. So my appointment at Virginia Tech was 50% teaching, 50% research. So I had a research lab where I had the opportunity to develop students and had students graduate, and they're now doing very well. And then in my in industry, transitioning into corporate America, having the opportunity to lead a business, to manage people. So over time, with my experience, what I learned was that, in general, we have huge gaps around women in leadership, women in very specific fields. And it's very hard to fill those gaps if you do not have a pipeline. You really have to go back and start developing people. When you're trying to hire or you need somebody, that's not when you start saying, oh my God, how come we don't have more Black women here, right? In my career, very few people have come up to me to say, Lorraine, here's my resume, help me find a job. Because again, we don't have a lot of Cameroonian women who are getting degrees in food chemistry or in food science, right? We just do not have the pipeline. So in my experience, looking at it, I did see a huge gap. We really need to start orienting girls and young women when they are much younger. Growing up in Cameroon was somewhat limited in the scope of what people can study. A lot of times people do not think about a cross-functional career. If somebody is in science, they think about that one career track. They never think about, okay, how do I become a leader, right? If I'm a researcher, how do I move into, again, management or some other fields? If I am studying accounting, how do I move into strategy? So we really have to start thinking about, how do you make impact, right? You have the education, you have the degree, but how do you use it in the real world? Because that is what creates the opportunity. And so with KUA, just in my journey to it came from my experience. I've always been very involved in women's empowerment. I was one of the early participants at the Women's Leadership Program at Yale University, which really helped to shape my leadership philosophy. This whole philosophy of when you're a leader, to be a multiplier, to find the best in people and make them excel, rather than always finding what people are doing wrong. Always find people's potential and really bring that out of them. So I did that program, an unbelievable program. I was, one of the co-founders of our women's business resource group at work. So this has always been a really passionate area for me around developing young women, because a lot of times I would be either the only woman in the room, or there would be a minority of women in the room. So that really was my journey to this has come from both my educational, but also professional and personal experience as well.
Thank you very much. And to those who, if you are watching, if you are just joining us, you are listening to two beautiful, hardworking pace setters. They happen to be lessons talking about the KUA Women's Foundation. And to those online, Eugenie Kemka, Esther Kabisen, I'm sure that's your classmate, because she says, proud of my pace setter sisters. Wow, go girls, Prax and Loom. I just learned your other name, Loom. So, Dr. Najela is also online. Praxi and Loom, this has to go viral indeed. So, Praxi, let's come back. Let's come over to you. Now we heard that wonderful journey of KUA Foundation. Your friend has thought about this thing. She has had the experience. She comes over now to you in Cameroon. Hey, this is something I've been thinking about. What motivated you to join to become a member of the board?
Yeah, like she said, from the beginning, when she conceived the idea, she got in touch with me, and I was like, wow, this is something I really want to do. If you remember, I just made mention about being in my profession, and you sit in a management team of 6 and there is only one woman. I don't think I want to continue being the only woman in the place, I want other women to join me. And with the other experiences, like I said, you have women being reluctant. You see some with a lot of potential. You see them excelling in other domains, but when you bring them into maybe some formal setup and use your skills, they're like, I'm not sure I can do it, So I just think that they need a little push, just a little push, and they will go places, So with that in mind as well, it was very motivating when Lorraine mentioned this to me, and I'm like, I'm all in, I'm like very, very, very in, kind of, because I also have a passion for empowering women.
Good. So again, you already joined this, and one of the first things you guys did, what that we know, was the seminar you had in Douala in, is it this year?
February this year, yeah.
February 2020. So let me hear what your experience was before I come to Dr. Lorraine to find out why she started off with that. So how was it? I know you were one of the presenters. How did that go? And
yeah, it was an amazing experience. You know, we started off, I was just like, okay, career seminar, let's talk to people, you know. We started off, we're like, okay, let's look for young girls who will come and we mentor and we try to coach them to let them know the possible careers that they have open for them, you know, based on your area of schooling and everything, you know. So we're really looking like more of high school students to come in. But when we started the publicity and sent the communication messages, we were surprised. You had university students wanting to come by all means, and we had people who had to travel from Boya, from Yaoundé, just to be part of it, you know. When we made the program, we said, okay, we needed this number. In the end, we had to go far beyond the number we had estimated because everybody wanted to come in. And then on the day of the seminar itself, I was surprised to see even mature women, a lot of mature women who were so interested in being there, you know, and they're like, okay, it doesn't matter that I'm already working. What I learned from here can help me improve on my career or even change from what I'm doing to something else, you know. So the participation was so wonderful. The women were very, you know, even the comments, the reactions we got after that, you know, it was, in short, it was wonderful.
Dr. Lauren, so again, tell me, you started off with a career seminar. Yeah. Why a career seminar? Why didn't you go around looking for maybe experts in science and tech? Why did you want to focus on the career part of it?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think conversation and discussion and really having a visual way, you know, as humans, we learn we're active learners, right? You know, people tend to absorb things a lot more when they're in a space with other people. That's why, you know, seminars and shows and, you know, all of these active spaces are so great, right? People walk away and they've picked up one or two things. So right off the bat, we knew that our first event had to be something like that. It had to be a seminar or some sort of an event where people would literally be in the room and be interactive and interact with people. And so the speakers that we had on the panel were all experts in different areas, you know. So as Praxis said, she did this riveting presentation on finance, and we actually did an article from her presentation because she had really great insights about how you manage your money, how you do planning, you know, how you get out, make sure you stay out of debt, a lot of really practical things, and how do you grow in a financial organization, how do you get into a leadership role as she's done. So we wanted to make sure that we had the students in the room. And we also had adults, we had, you know, school administrators who showed up. And we wanted to be able to create a space where they would have conversation, they would have that whole professional experience of, you know, this is what the real world looks like. And I'll just share a personal story. When I was in business school, the director of our MBA program took us to dinner at the Four Seasons. You know, and you know, it was a few of us, and she took us to dinner at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. And she said to us, you know, I'm doing this so that when you graduate and you're in the business world and you have a meeting at a certain location, you feel comfortable, you know, so you don't feel like you don't belong. And so when I graduated and I got into my career and I had to have dinner with senior people in any space, I felt comfortable because I had, you know, the Four Seasons is right, a 5-star hotel, very posh, very selective. But that experience that I had prepared me for the real world, because then I could sit on a table with anybody and not feel out of place. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have that same atmosphere at the seminar and really have a good environment was to take the students from, again, just thinking about this is an academic space and say, tomorrow, if you're in the real world and you have to present at a conference, or you have to have a meeting, or you have to go to a conference because you want to network with an important person, that you can walk into any space with confidence and be able to interact with people. So that's one of the reasons why we did not start with a one-on-one mentoring program where people just interface. You know, obviously we have that today, but we really wanted an event that would be an experience for the students. You know, one of the students actually wrote back and said, wow, this was my first time attending a seminar. And that really was the goal, right? For people to have this unique experience where tomorrow, if there's a conference anywhere in the world, they can write an abstract, they can feel very comfortable walking into it, sitting in a room, presenting. And so we were just so pleasantly surprised by like Prak said, you know, the response was way beyond anything we had imagined, we had envisioned. We actually had to cap it at some point because the hall where we were, you know, at the hotel, there was just a limit to how many people you can have, you know. And the final piece I want to add, because my other paid sister Najela is on the watching as well. But one of our speakers was Dr. Augustina Fongod, who's also a lesson and our big sister. And she's a professor at the University of Yaoundé, but also an administrator at the ministry. So she also has a cross-functional career. She's a botanist. She studied botany. That's not a field that is very well known in Cameroon. And just like Prak said, you know, the minute you know, I contacted her and I said, you know, Satina, can you do? She said yes right away. I get it. You know, and so there are really a lot of women who are motivated out there, successful professional women who really understand the need for us to help, you know, mentor and model and be visible to young girls and young women in Cameroon about potential professional and career paths.
Excellent. Let me see what I can share my screen here. For 1 second. I can't. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, obviously, I see you have the website of the foundation. So everybody visit the foundation. We have a lot of pictures from the seminar in February.
Right. So I was going to put up the list of the speakers: Dr. Tina Fongod, Ms. Praxidis Banseka, of course, Dr. Lauren Niba, Mr. Emmanuel Abongwa. And the thing that really caught me, you know, the hotel, DK Hotel, Bonaveri. That was February 29th. And I think that's a great experience. The fact that we always say experience is the best teacher. You have taken your own experience. And there's one thing you have mentioned here at least 5 times. Dr. Najela has a challenge for both of you, which I'm going to put out shortly. But you have talked about is it cross-functional or cross-cut? No, cross-functional, isn't it? What is that? I mean, in a nutshell, because for most of us, let me share this. My daughter is in 2nd grade, going to 3rd grade. And every year they have to ask different professionals to come and talk in the school, orient them. And I asked my daughter, so what do you intend to be? And she told me that a firefighter. And I'm like, what? So that was what she had heard in school that year. The following year, I'm asking her, what do you want to be? She says, a medical doctor. Then I understood, every year the person who comes and fascinates you, that is what you want to become, isn't it? But this is different because this is what is happening at elementary school. That's not the same thing we have in Cameroon. People who go to school just go along and then discover, okay, let's go and do history, do literature and all that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the cross-functional thing. Because it's a concept that's not well known. Yeah. What is it and why are you fascinated or so engaged in it?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, wonderful that your daughter gets this exposure to seeing role models. Again, it ties back to what we said earlier. But don't be discouraged. She could be a medical doctor who's also a firefighter, right? It's possible. She could be a firefighting medical doctor. So it's not impossible, but you know, this whole idea of you know, sort of really thinking about when you're in your career, because the truth is that, and I think it's a challenge we had with our educational system growing up. I honestly hope it's changing in Cameroon. I think it is. But, you know, we sort of had this tunnel vision, right? Where, you know, if you were a scientist or you were good in physics or you were good in math, then you became a math professor or whatever, right? You know, it was very vertical. You know, you were a technical expert. And there's still technical experts today, right? You know, the person who is a NASA scientist trying to get a rocket to Mars, we need him to be a very, very good rocket scientist and focus on that, right? So there's obviously a space. You know, if you're a researcher in, you know, a vaccine researcher or whatever, we need people who are very vertical and very expert. But we also need people who are sort of more horizontal, where you can do more than one thing and do it very well. You know, and be able to understand multiple concepts at the same time. Because at the end of the day, what is important is impact. it's great to have the knowledge in your head, but if you cannot transfer that knowledge into a meaningful thing, and we know a lot of smart people, right? We know a lot of people who are super smart. They have a lot of letters after their names. They have all kinds of degrees. If they're in a meeting and they talk, everybody goes, wow, this person is smart. But how do you translate that knowledge into actual impact and making change and being able to say, this is what it means. All of this stuff that I have learned, this is how it's applied. And so that's what being cross-functional is. A lot of people we all have multiple skills. And, that's the whole idea behind finding out your strengths. There's nobody who is just good at one thing. A lot of people are good at many things. And so it's really figuring out, and they want to do more than one thing, right? So a lot of times, people come to me for career advice, and always their number one thing is, I think I could be doing more. They work a lot, they work long hours, but they're not satisfied because they feel that they have other skills that are not being leveraged. There are a lot of people who are very good presenters, but because there are scientists working in the lab, it's never occurred to them to say, let me do a science show where I am telling people about science, where it's not a technical scientific presentation. I don't have tables and tables of data. Maybe I take my science knowledge and make it into a cartoon, right? You may have somebody who is we know the left and right. I am somebody who is both left brain and right brain. I'm both analytical, but I'm also visual. And there's a lot of people who are like that. A lot of designers are people who can take different things and put together. So this whole idea of being cross-functional, and I would kind of, maybe practical input as well, is, think about whatever field that you are, as you apply that field, is there some other skill that you need? And I chose to, I became a professor because my dad was a college professor. He was a principal and a professor and a huge role model for me and always encouraged me. So I always just thought that was my path. And I love teaching. I still do. I love interacting with students. But one of the things I wanted to do was apply my knowledge in the real world. And so when I went to business school, like Pratt said, my first thinking was I want to do marketing because I want to be able to market this. And I was very fortunate that our MBA director at the time said, well, you know what, Lorraine, if you want to go into leadership and really manage budgets, you need finance, right? So that's how I ended up majoring in finance. And so that's what it is. You're a scientist, but you have these analytical skills. So I could write business cases. I did strategy in my role. When I manage a business, I develop the strategy because those are skills that you don't learn as a scientist. You have to learn them, in another space. So I really would encourage people, if you're somebody if you're a very good physicist, but you're also somebody who likes to work with people, think about how do you take your expertise in that field and translate it in another, because that is what makes you unique. That's what makes the piece of paper does not make you, it makes you special. People know you're very smart, but what really differentiates you and makes you stand out is what is that other extra talent you have that other people do not have, and how are you able to marry them together? Because that is how you make impact.
Yeah, Dr. Lauren, I always try to inject myself into the conversation so that I try to look as smart as you, because I know that being cross-functional, I studied to become a priest, isn't it? Okay. So that is why I went into journalism, that cross-functionality between the word out, preaching the word, and now getting into journalism. You see, I've been doing this cross-functional thing for a while. I just did not know how to say it. But Praxidis, over to you. Now, I think you mentioned it in the beginning. You said something about becoming an agronomist or something, but then you went over to finance. Am I right? Therefore, there are things that I'm sure is because you had the opportunities. The reason why people have this tunnel vision is because they are limited, their environment has already limited them. The poverty that is on the ground is such that one is just looking for the fastest means. The microwave mentality where you just want the fastest thing in a short possible time so that you get off. Nobody wants to put the energy. I don't know whether that's the experience you have of young girls. They just want to get the next big thing and off. Nobody wants to apply themselves concretely. Am I right with that analysis?
Yeah, some young girls, and unfortunately a fairly good number, because like I said, fortunately with our upbringing, we had this training, like be whatever you can, so we had this desire to study, like I said, after my high school where I came out with all science subjects, I think one of the good things that happened to me was because I did my university education in Nigeria. I went to the University of Yaoundé. In those days, of course, it was huge class, so many people, strange language, difficult, everything was happening there. You leave from a school where you are 20 to 30 in a class and you enter a classroom where you are 800. It wasn't very easy to cope there, so we had to switch over to Nigeria. And I think with the Nigerian universities, with so many other avenues and so many possibilities of courses that we could go in for, that is one of the reasons that made me go in for agricultural economics. And I think initially I wanted to read computer sciences, but somehow I switched over to agricultural economics. And in agricultural economics, you are like doing the financial part of agriculture. That is really what it's all about. So with that, I gradually tilted to the finance area. But talking about cross-functionality, I think it is not only about your career, it is also about involvement into your community. Because, for example, in my community, I used to assist in the church, just like, okay, I'm free on Sundays. I can assist in making announcements in church. I realized that was one of my skills naturally. So I could make announcements in church, and I had so many people always like remembering you do it so well. I was like, okay. And until one young guy walked up to me after church someday and asked me, "Auntie, are you a journalist?" I'm like, no. But he thought I was a journalist. I'm not a journalist. I've never had any training. It also encouraged me to go into radio and television programs for my organization. So sometimes when they run radio programs, I do the radio programs, and I found myself very much at home with those programs. I did a bit of teaching, so I do a lot of seminars, I do trainings and all that. So it is like even in your career as well as in your social community, the skills you have, you use them, and it's beneficial to everybody and to you as well.
So I told you that you had a challenge, okay? And Dr. Lauren, you mentioned it, and I'm sure you're going to. Let's talk about that. This is what Dr. Najela says. The two ladies on the panel, in addition to their strong educational and professional background, have powerful, empowering fathers. Can you both speak about the huge part your dads had to play to build your self-esteem and female prowess? We will speak about the mothers later. And I think it's very important, especially I can talk about it within the context of the United States, isn't it? Where you find the society, you see people growing in single family homes, and most of them are single mothers, isn't it? The dads are all absent. You're wondering where the dads have gone to. But again, to your point, because I already heard Dr. Lauren say that my dad played a very important role. Let's hear that story.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to ask Prax to actually go first because she has a very similar story with her dad as well. So, it's interesting that I now brought it up. But absolutely, and I think it is very important for many reasons, right? So, to your point, first of all, even just having a father figure, in the house to begin with, but in addition, having a father who supports you. And it's also a role model. So I was very fortunate that, I was there, when I was born, my dad was principal of CAS, and I saw his leadership style. I learned a lot from his leadership style. Our house in Bambly was always full of students. So he had this leadership style that I liked a lot. He was always a multiplier leader, sort of made sure that people felt comfortable and expressed themselves. And that's still the way my family is, right? Everybody has a voice, regardless of how crazy your opinion might be. But so, even just visually, he was a great role model. But even more importantly, throughout my PhD my doctoral program, which Lambert, as you know, it's a very grueling experience, right? There's days when you get discouraged. There's times when it seems hopeless. My dad never doubted me for 1 minute. He's never doubted me in my career. He's one of the biggest, advocates and supporters of KUA, right? Every time we do a program, he goes, "I know this is going to succeed because you're on it." And Praxis, by the way, he's a huge fan of Praxidis, by the way. So, so I really would encourage parents to, first of all, for dads to become more involved, for moms to involve dads. For dads who are wondering, how do I encourage my daughter? Remember that I always tell people, you may have 5 children, but each of your kids only has one father, right? So each of your kids looks at you as the only father that they have. So everything you say, even if you don't, you always try to be encouraging. You always try to be supportive. Be the advocate for your daughters, even if they're going into a space where you're apprehensive. I'm very, very positive that I'm sure my dad worries that, okay, these things that you're doing. When I used to travel a lot for work, I'm traveling and I'm in different places. He prays the rosary for all of us every day. I'm sure he worries, but he doesn't say it, right? So make sure that you encourage your children. You're an advocate for them. They know that you do not doubt them, right? And that they're out there defending you every day, especially for your daughters. So if you're a man, encourage your daughters. Perhaps talk about the fact that Lord's really taught us that you can be anything you want to be. Try, and it's very important for fathers to do that. A lot of times, again, the data shows that culturally, parents, and it's not conscious, right? It's very important. A lot of times, people are not making these conscious decisions, but just culturally, people always associate their male children with certain fields or certain attributes or certain abilities, and they attribute certain qualities to their daughters. So as a human being, obviously you cannot be completely neutral, but always consciously try to think about, how can I support my daughter? How can I encourage my daughter? Because women, girls in particular, they need that special encouragement from their fathers.
It's interesting. Before we come, I want to hear your side of the story. Eugenie Kemka says, daddies are the best pillars for the girl child. Please let fathers know that to encourage their girl child to be powerful women of tomorrow. Thank you, Eugenie. Again, I'm sure you all are what you are. Thanks. We're not saying because of, but thanks to the role of your dad. So Praxidis, let's hear. I want to hear that beautiful part of your dad.
Yeah, come to think of it, my father was my biggest fan. I think one of the major roles that my father played in my life was motivational. My dad always had this motivation for people who succeeded in their exams. So you had this zeal to do your best. He would like, anybody who is among the first 10 in their class is going to get this. You are going to go to this place. I'm going to take you out. So, with that, he made us, you want to be among those 10 so that you can get the benefits. And he made sure he never failed. And I can tell you, my dad was really special. Considering back in those days, my dad had this policy: when you passed your ordinary level, my father will get an air ticket for you to get the experience of flying. How many people got into planes in those days? That was one of the things my dad would make sure that he did for us. And then back in our house, there was nothing. We're 6 of us, 5 girls. And my dad had no distinction between a girl child and a boy child. And he will always tell you, I know you can do it. When I went for my O-levels, when I finished writing and got home, my dad said, congratulations. I'm like, I just finished writing. The result is, no, I know you will pass, And then he always had this way of telling you, when you want to do something, say, go right ahead. I know you can do it. You are up to the task. And coincidentally, without planning it so much, I ended up in the same organization where my dad worked. So people are like, okay, you just stepped into your dad's shoes. I'm like, those shoes are very big. I don't think I fit into those shoes, But I ended up working in the same organization where he worked and rose to higher heights. And I think with that, we shared a lot. We used to discuss a lot. So my dad has really been a very big influence in my life. Till today, what I do each time I think of him, and when I do certain things, I'm like, I know wherever you are, you're watching me.
This is great listening to, and as a dad, I feel even more challenged, and not just because I'm a dad, but a dad of 2 beautiful girls. I also think that this is a cry and appeal to all the men who are dads, especially of girls. Please, let us rise up to the challenge. My teacher used to say that God is not in need of another Lauren. God needs the other women, isn't it? Because he already has Lauren, already has Praxidis, but he needs more of these women in order for the society to become better. And I also want to thank those who are following up. There's a classmate of mine, Father Joseph Dufe, who is in Italy. He says, these are convinced women. Their conviction comes from their experience. Gone are the days when women used to be etiquette. The distinction of gender roles needs not hinder the feminine energy in the woman. Unfortunately, there are still societies that block the full realization of this energy. It is time that we think in a complementary manner. Hey, woman, hey, thank you, Father. Nigella says, Praxia, experience and soft skills and how well you utilize them is a huge lesson for all the young girls out there. So let's touch on that. What are some of those soft skills? Okay, because again, when we talk about these skill sets, we can go out in a tangent and talk about the science thing and all that. But you mentioned it. There are people who are so good at what they do, you bring them in to a particular place and you're wondering what is going on. And I'm sure it's because of that lack of soft skills. What are some of those soft skills that women need to, I mean, not just women, but everybody needs to be paying attention to?
Yeah. So Prax, do you want to go for it? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Talk about the soft skills. I mean, like I said, it's always about like, what is your passion, you know? Because I believe, which is what we're taught in what everybody has their talent. You have what you are able to do, you know, and it is better you use it very well. I'll give an example of a soft skill of, this was a man. I was working with this colleague. He was my assistant, and he is soft-spoken. He is able to handle situations very calmly. And sometimes I'm really like, you know, when I want to push to get things done, I can be very aggressive and very pushful. So when I realize it's a situation where getting aggressive or doing it forcefully is not going to be the best solution, I'm like, okay, you, in this environment, if the people get angry and I get angry, it's not going to work. So you are better placed to handle this. So I would prefer you go to this meeting so that it can be successful, you know. I mean, that is, by nature, he is on the quiet side and calm, and he can handle certain situations in a calmer manner, you know. So it is just like you identify what you have. In this case, it was just because it was a man. But there are women who are able to, you know, you go to an environment, things are so hot, boiling, and you just need to say one or two things, and it changes the whole atmosphere. We have mentoring children, taking care of children in schools. Of course, we know that in our nursery schools, the majority of the teachers are women, because I'm not sure that the men are going to change the diapers and carry sleeping children and, you know, all the like. So it is just to identify what are the skills that you have and how can you use them in the society. That's why I said your skills don't have to be used only in the professional field, in your community. People who, if you have this ability to bring people together, even for a community development project. We have some women in my locality recently who spearheaded a project of constructing a gate, a fence and a gate to enhance the security. You know, I mean, it is women standing ahead and getting this done. So that's what I look at as the soft skills that people have, and you can always impact your community in one way or the other, whether you are working or you are not working, whether it is in your profession or it's not your profession, but you are impacting the lives of the people around you.
Great. Dr. Lauren.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I love that example that Prax gave about the gate, right? Because again, it shows when people trust their power, you know, and they're able to stand up and do something versus waiting for somebody else or expecting somebody else. And I think, you know, this whole area of soft skills, I'm sure everyone has heard the saying that it is not what you say or what you do, it is how you do it, right? So a lot of times, that is why sometimes people can be stating a fact and nobody is hearing them, because how you are stating, you may be stating a very clear fact, or you may be asking people to do something that is very reasonable. But if you're asking them in a manner, if the how of how you're doing it is not good, they're not going to do it, right? And then you're going to find someone else who will come in and approach people very differently, and that person will make change. So soft skills really are a differentiator. both professionally and outside. The other thing is, always remember that you're one person, right? I know we all have to compartmentalize, work is work, your personal life is your personal life, but your body doesn't know that, your brain doesn't know that. So you always want to try to be consistent, know that there's things you can bring from work to your personal life, and there's things you can bring from your community. There are lessons you can learn from your community to bring back to your workplace. So it's very important that you always think about, how am I communicating something? What skills do I have? How do I say it? I always say, the word connection and connectivity is a really, really important concept. And it's something I talked about at the seminar, because a lot of times the way you grow in the world are the people that you're connected to and how you connect to people. And people connect to you because of how you are, not because of what you are. So a lot of times you get opportunities because you've met somebody, the way in which you approach them. It has nothing to do with your degree or your title. It is how they feel around you. So the example Prax gave of women getting together and doing a project is because they felt safe in that space. They trusted each other. Those are things that have nothing to do with numbers, right? I'm sure they had to raise money. It cost money. There were a lot of tactical things they had to do. But in terms of actually moving forward, it ended up, this person that I'm working with, do I like them? Do I trust them? Do we want to do this together? So soft skills are very, very important. How people feel around you. People will go, if people trust you, they will take risk because they know, they trust you, right? They know who you are. And so it's very, very important, to really do this self-examination and say, what am I good at and how can I use it, someplace else. You're hosting a show now, you're doing a lot of different things. And again, I can't say it enough, we all have those abilities. We just either have not explored them, or a lot of times because we were not raised to think in that way, we think, oh my gosh, you have to be a specialist in a particular area before you can actually talk about it.
You mentioned something which is very important. You said it twice here in different ways, and that is connection and connectivity. Because you gave an example of, you've never had somebody walk up to you and say, here's my resume. Can you help me find a job? Which is something that many of us find difficult to do, isn't it? And again, I want to talk about it in terms of, the experience, and without sounding very, it can be a fallacy of hasty generalization, is that generally people don't tend to trust others who come to them because of the experiences they have had. You are in a job, you bring in a fellow brother or fellow sister, and they're the ones who start angling to try to take you down, isn't it? And before you know it, there are stories, one story, two stories, and you're wondering whether you should be able to do that. I don't know whether that's your experience. I know we're going out of what we're supposed to be talking about, but that's just because of that aspect of connection and connectivity. We're able to, in Cameroon, they call it bribery and corruption. In the Western world, it is not what you have, isn't it? It is who you know, isn't it? That's basically it. You find out that there are 1,000 applications or applicants on a job, but the person who all of them are well qualified, isn't it? But who knows who gets the job? Am I wrong with that, Dr. Lauren?
Well, I think you have the extreme view. In all honesty, what you're saying is not inaccurate, but that's not the whole story, right? I think it's very important to know that. So the first thing I just want to correct.
That's being very generous. You can tell me that I'm wrong. It's okay to me.
No, I think there's a broader scope to that. So I just want to correct it. People send me resumes all the time, but a lot of times they're not in my field, or they're not, they're out of scope, whatever. Because again, we don't have a lot of food scientists, or chemists or specialists. But this whole idea of connectivity, so there's an element of it which is around who you know. But think about this, right? So if you're working on a project and you really want to pull it together, you're going to want to work with people that you can work with, right? That is just the reality. You're not going to go and say, let me go see who has the highest degree or whatever. You're going to think, if I put together a team, who's going to share the vision? How are we going to work together? And that's really the true meaning of connectivity. The way a lot of people get opportunities professionally and personally is because they were on a project team. And while they were on that team, they were positive, they were negative, they showed up, they did their work, they said hello to everybody, right? So the head of that team walked away with a positive impression. The next time they have an opportunity, that's the first name they're going to think about. They're not going to think about the resume that is sitting on their desk. Because again, as human beings, right? That's the whole element of soft skills. You're thinking about, who is this person that if I am with this person, I know they're going to show up. I know we vibe. I know we gel. And, and so it's very, people always do not think about that. Again, I think our socialization and our learning is, let me walk in with my big degree and my big qualification, and I talk very big things. But at the end of the day, remember that people also have goals, right? Everybody wants to move forward. They want to deliver on their projects, and they're going to find or their initiative or their programs, and they're going to work with the people that they know they can work with. So it's very, very important. I think, Lambert, to your point about, when you bring in a relative or in a community, someone that, sometimes they come for you. Unfortunately, I've heard a lot of stories like that. I think it has led to a lot of mistrust. So I really want to take this opportunity to encourage people that when somebody gives you an opportunity, know that they're opening the door for you, right? So you go in that door. Now try to also build your own networks in there. Leave this person who brought you, don't go after them, don't whatever, you have the opportunity, build your own network, see how you can also grow so you can bring in somebody else. I've always said there's never enough people in the room. You have to try, never think that, because I'm the only Black person here, if another Black person comes in, then there's no room for me. Or if I'm the only woman, there's no room. Let's try the pie. We can grow the pie. It's not that, it's not as if there's a finite pie that, everybody gets a slice and then it's finished. We can make it bigger. We can make it grow. So, so it's very, very, very important for us to think about, every action that you're in, do it very well, but make sure that, you're connected and you're a positive influence, and you're sort of leveraging that, because you never know, and I'm just going to share again, I have a lot of stories, but Lambert, I'm going to share a story with you because, when I was early on in my career in industry, my boss at the time had to go to Japan. He had a trip, he had meetings to attend in Japan, and he couldn't go for a personal reason at the last minute. So he said to me, Lorraine, can you go for me, right? And of course, I jumped in. I said, yeah, absolutely. So of course, I get this opportunity. He was so nervous. He wrote out all these cards in Japanese. Hello, my name is Lorraine in Japanese, because he was very worried, right? But then I go out to Japan and we have a meeting. And so I meet people from Thailand, I meet people from Singapore, I meet people from other places. I get to know them, and they go, oh my gosh, Lorraine, you have to come to Singapore. You have to come to Thailand, right? So that's how you start making connections. Now, this is what I will tell you. When I manage people, sometimes I would ask them, can you go to this meeting? No, it's not my job. I don't want to do it. You're trying to make me do too much, right? So again, you always have to think about, because opportunities are not always obvious, right? When the opportunity is before you, sometimes it's not obvious. And again, you always want to find opportunities to connect with people. Make sure that when you're there, you're leveraging your soft skills to be approachable, to be someone that people like to work with, because that is how you get other opportunities. People get to know you. Now, when they're working on something else, they think about you, they call you, and you continue to get opportunities.
Wonderful. Praxedis, that's the American experience. I don't know whether the Cameroonian experience matches that, because we know how it works down there, isn't it? You must be somebody's relation. You must know somebody who knows somebody in order to, and you have to come with an envelope. So I don't know, what is the situation there?
No, I don't think that is the situation. Not all the time. Of course, bribery and corruption is something that is everywhere, not only in Cameroon. But I think still going with what Lorraine just said, it's about the people you know and the people you want to work with, the soft skills that the people have. Somebody can have all the good degrees, wonderful CV, resume, but is he the kind of person that if you say you have to work on Sunday, he's going to work on Sunday? Is it the kind of person that will work till late in the night? Or is it the kind of person that if you call at 3 a.m. because you are stuck up somewhere, he'll be ready to assist? Those are the kind of things that you look at. In the course of my career, I've seen people who come in out of the blue and they grow to great heights. You don't always have to know somebody. You just need to, at the beginning, present what you have. And once you get in, you show what you can do. It will take you places. So it's not always about bribery and corruption. It's about people looking for whom they think can do the job and do it well. And then people taking advantage of opportunities they have and doing well. A lot of people go now into professional schools without giving envelopes to anybody. So it's not always about corruption.
Good job, sisters. You guys referenced a lot of words. There's somebody who is claiming St. Augustine's College. Says, good job, sisters from SAC. We saw this coming. Your leadership role has always been exemplary. Keep it up. Fight on. You have one of your brothers, Praxidis, that's Shufan Binglo, says hi. You know, who else? Soft skills in action, indeed. That's Najela saying, no one is ever wrong. What a lesson. That's referencing what you said. I think if your delivery is exceptional, your experience special, and your foundation strong, such stories will not destroy it at all for you. I'm sure the person is reacting to the thing about somebody going around that you brought into the company, isn't it? But now, we are all talking, I mean, we are holding many things constant and hoping that everything is working well within that space. The most important thing we have here is that positive energy. When you're able to exude that positive energy, you are able to draw in people, isn't it? And you move forward with that. Let's transition to something that is happening because as I had indicated before, I started running this show in March when COVID came up, and it seems as if COVID is now disappearing because nobody is talking about it in a certain sense. But I know that part of the KUA Foundation, one of the things they have done, and the strategic pillars of the KUA Women's Foundation, you have advocacy, you have empowering, you have enabling, and you have informing. Am I right? So let's talk about that part. You had a project. I'm not sure when you formed KUA Foundation, you were thinking about COVID. But then within the context of this, COVID happened. What did KUA Foundation do in order to manage COVID within the space where they're operating in Cameroon?
Yeah. Prax, do you wanna take that?
Okay, sure. I want to take it because I kind of led the project. I think it was an amazing opportunity for us. Like you said, KUA didn't plan on COVID, but COVID happened. And of course, KUA can always make the adjustments to fit in the environment or to take care of our most immediate needs. I think that was just shortly after our seminar in Douala and the COVID issue came up. I mean, there was sensitization, there was a scare all across the world, and everybody was like wondering, are we going to die anytime? You know, and above all, the forecasts that were coming up, in Africa, we don't have good medical facilities. When it gets to Africa, the death rate will be horrible, you know, and I mean, there was all the scare and everything. So that's one of the things that pushed KUA and said, what can we do? You know, so we thought about it, KUA Women's Foundation, together with the Bamenda Pacesetters. Because as we've been talking about Pacesetters are the class of 1981 to 86 in Our Lady of Lourdes. Okay. So each batch in Our Lady of Lourdes has their name, and of course our own name is the Pacesetters because we set the pace. So the Pacesetter group in Bamenda is made up of about 10 ladies, and of course KUA partnered with them, and these ladies were very willing and very available to participate in this project. What was the project all about? We thought, what do we do in the face of this COVID? What can be the impact of KUA women during this period? And that is when we came out with a project to assist women. Why were we assisting women? Women are the mothers of the house. Whatever you do through a woman, be sure that it will reach the household. So we targeted women. And I'll tell you directly, we touched about 300 women. And the multiplier effect, because you have some women who got their gift pack and went and shared the pack with their sisters who were not able to make it. Because I met women later who were like, I didn't know about this. And when my friend told me about it, she shared what she had with me. So we organized this in various locations. We started off at my Trinquen. Then we moved up to Upstation, where we targeted particularly the Bororo women. Of course, we know that the Bororos are a minority group, and then the women there, they are more marginalized than the rest of the women. So we put them together and had these love packs that we offered them, made up of savon to wash hands. We gave them hand sanitizers. We gave them masks, which were the in thing. Those were the items that were to help them in the prevention against COVID. I can tell you the turnout was amazing, because when we programmed one day for the Bororo women, We went, we did the sharing. We had about 70 women on that day. Just because we had extra, we ended up with more than 80. And we had to reschedule another day to go back to this group, because those who came up later on who were not registered in the list we requested were almost the same number as those who had received the packs. So we had this shared to them. It was amazing because we had, on that day, we had all the Bororo women come out in their numbers, and then you had their children accompany them. You could see the children all excited. We had these big buckets for washing of hands with the tap attached to it. You know, so all of them, we gave them lectures on how to wash their hands, how to prevent COVID, like moving in and out of your house, the preventive measures you should take, social distancing. You know, so all the pace setters in Bamenda were really like very much available. We would spend a Sunday and talk to the women, share the love packs to them and exchange with them, listen to their questions. And the responses from some of them were so touching. You know, I could remember one lady who said, she's an IDP. She had been displaced from her home in Boyo division. And since she came to Bamenda, it was like the very first time she found herself in a group that actually realized their plan to hand something to her, you know. So after the Bororo women, which we did twice, we had other smaller groups of women that we just gave out the packs to them. And then we also visited an orphanage. There's an orphanage at the Catholic Mission in Quen, which is for girls. At that period, they were also like limiting visitors, which was but normal. So we had to offer them a bucket for washing of hands with soap and hand sanitizers, because we're looking at how do we help women in the face of this, you know. Some of the men may go out and they have where to get their stuff, but the women back at home, especially those who are staying at home and not going out, do they have items or whatever? Do they have, first of all, the knowledge about the illness, the COVID, and how to prevent it? And then do they have the means to respect the preventive measures? So that was the target of our project. And at the end of the project, we were really very satisfied. Okay, another group we met was still at Mile 4. After the orphanage, we met a group of women, most of them internally displaced persons. And I can tell you it was a very, very fulfilling experience with my pacesetter sisters.
Kudos, Bamenda pacesetters, right? Women who get it done.
Yes, I mean, I was just wondering who these pacesetters are. Thank you for telling me they belong to that band 1981 to 1986. And I want to, on behalf of the team here, we want to say thank you to the women, the pacesetters, the lessons, who are doing everything to improve not only on the lives, you know, the healthy outcomes, but also making sure that career outcomes for young women through the KUA Foundation is great. I want to give a great shout out to that class, that batch, 1981-1986. I'll reference you every time I have the opportunity. And you guys are welcome, because I also see Honorine from Germany. She says, Lambert, this is amazing. And she has put some picture there that is dancing quite well. But again, this is just to show that giving back to the community does not need to be, you don't need to put them in the millions, isn't it? The word that has come out more than any other on this forum today is impact. Impact. That is what has been coming out. These are two professional women who belong to a foundation, and all they are trying to do is impact the lives of others. And that impact, they started off with a career workshop, then they have done this other part of it, and there are many 2 or 3 other things that we are going to talk about. But I'm sure Dr. Lauren wants to also talk about the COVID thing before we move on to the next issue.
Yeah. Oh no, I think, you know, Pratt said it so well, and I have to say it's one of the most, and she knows, I've told her this, it's one of the most efficiently executed project that I've been a part of, you know, and you know, it's just extremely fulfilling to see all of my classmates, people stepped up right away. So again, think about the situation today in Bamenda, right? You know, this is Bamenda, there's all kinds of things going on, there's COVID, and people give up their time. And we actually had people donated. We have a pacesetter who donated one of the buckets for washing hands, the buckets with a spout. We had one of our classmates who donated hand sanitizer. So again, it just shows that, I think, Lambert, you put the nail on the head. It doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar big thing. You just need to, again, have the right people, have people who have the vision, people who are ready to execute, have an unbelievable coordinator, project lead like Praxi, right? Who, very focused, the educational, sessions. I really want to give a shout out to one of my classmates. She's a high school teacher. And, the video I saw of her doing a COVID session in Pidgin was unbelievable, right? So again, this whole, really bringing her teaching skills into breaking down COVID prevention in Pidgin English and educating women. So people stepped up, used their skills, made the sacrifices, the love packs that they gave out. A lot of the women, in turn multiplied and shared them. So it's really just a lot of lessons, but also extremely impactful. And to know that in the middle of a pandemic, we did not just sit back and be all helpless, but said, what is any little thing that we can do for women? And we were able to execute on that. So we're really grateful, very grateful.
And this ties into what we were talking about earlier on, isn't it, about soft skills? Isn't it? You are able to go back to that in terms of that positive impact on the lives of people. And you do not just go to Commercial Avenue and just be handing out. You actually targeted it. You look for the most vulnerable communities, the Mbororos, for example, and that was very insightful. And that brings me again to this, because I've seen my friend Nereus Patrick, soft skills that are not used are no skills. Good job, ladies. We need to bring out the talents in us, isn't it? Then I think next time when we're having a KUA Foundation event, we'll ask Dr. Najela to host, because she's been quite on point with this. She says, something about work-life balance. Okay, how do you guys? What is it? How do you put the two together? You are a woman. Okay, you have to work, you have other things that you have to take care of. And again, in relation to the problems that we have been talking about, the mental health challenges that we have been talking about, these are some of the things. If you do not have that balance, because Praxidis is in Douala, she had to go to the office today, then come back home in order to take care of this. And I'm sure she's just waiting for this show to be over so that she can rest. Okay, so how do you do that as a professional? How do you make sure that you have that work-life balance in order to continue? Because at the time burnout, if you are not careful, you can easily get burnt out with some of these things, and again, you just crumble the whole project.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to let Praxi also take that first, but I just want to acknowledge Najela, because she's actually, as with all of my pace setter classmates, they're all champions of KUA, right? We're very, very fortunate that I just have a group of women who support and encourage us. A ton of them are watching right now. So I, again, just very grateful, very outstanding. And Najela in particular, Najela is actually a mentor in our program, right? So she has a mentee. She's very, very active, very supportive, and so as you can see, she's part of the show, which is great. So
yes, and there's Esther Kabisen. Bamenda Pacesetters Oye, proudly Pacesetters. So I can imagine lots of them. Yes. So tell us about your work-life balance. Let's hear.
Yeah, I think it's all about making out a program for yourself. You have to prioritize your activities, and you see how you organize your day and your activities. For example, if I get up in the morning, I know I have to prepare my juice. For example, I make my fruit juice, which I drink. This is what I have to do. I know that I have to get up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. if I have to get this done. It is just a matter of scheduling your activities. I have time for my sports. I have to program my sporting activities. Some of the times I add studies to it. I know when I have to study. Everything is just the way I balance out is just making out a schedule, prioritizing activities, and why not, when necessary, outsourcing some activities that I can outsource so that I can focus on what really needs my attention.
Wow, that's great to hear. Some great tips there. Yes, Dr. Lauren, I'm sure you're anxious to say something.
Not terribly anxious, because Prax really says it all. But, and what I'll add is that, it goes back to values, right? So Prax talked about priorities, because the truth is that in life, nobody is perfect, right? So there's always something in your life that you're never going to be able to do everything. So that people think they're doing everything very well, but it's not possible. And so that is what now brings you to what are your values? What is important to you? Because those are the choices that you make. You know, I think there's a very common saying, show me your checkbook and I will tell you what your priorities are, right? So a lot of times, there's a lot of people who say, oh, you know, I'm a wonderful Christian, but you look at their checkbook, they don't spend any money in church, right? They spend their money on other stuff. So again, that's just a saying, right? Where you have to really be very clear in your mind. What is very important to me? What are the priorities? Is family important to you? That's the thing that you're going to make sure you make time for. And so it's very, very important in terms of balance. Be very clear in the whole concept about working smart, not just working hard. As you know, there are a lot of people who can be in the office for 10 hours and they're not being productive, right? You know, they're just doing stuff on and on and on. So you have to have your values right. You have to be really clear what is the most important thing, right? There's a lot of people who do prayer and meditation every day, every morning. If you do that, you know you have to wake up. If you have an hour commute, then you have to factor in time for that. So it's very, very important to be very clear. Structure is very important. I always talk about structure. You have to plan for it. Your life doesn't just happen by accident. But you also really have to think about your value system. You know, are you just spending time, you know, if you're watching television or you're on the internet or whatever, versus is your family important to you? Is it more important to get on the phone and talk to somebody who's going through a difficult time? If you have a relative and say, okay, can I spend 2 hours with this person, or do I want to spend those 2 hours watching a movie? So it's very, very important to have your priorities right. Service, right? I think it ties into, because one of the feedback I get from people all the time is, well, you know, how are you able to do things, you know, with work, with your career and whatever? If service is a priority to you, then you prioritize that, right? You're going to take out something else that may not have been more important. How you spend your money, right? You know, you're going to take out something, you know, something that is, should I buy an extra pair of shoes or should I donate this money to charity? Those are the things that you have to actually think about as a person. And it really goes back to your values. It goes back to what you prioritize, what is important and how you do it.
So, yes, that sounds like going out in a straight line, isn't it? Priorities, values, structure. But in this world where things always happen, isn't it? You always have some of those things come. How do you deal with those challenges of temptations or things that always come to take you away from, you know, what you have planned for the day? I don't think that your plan always happens that way, Praxidis. You plan to start off at 4 a.m., but today you got Kua Women's Foundation making you to get up early, go to work and come back. So your whole day is messed up, isn't it? How do you factor in those occasions so that you don't let the accidents become the main thing of the day? You know, because that's a challenge. There are times when you plan out something, then the whole day becomes messed up because of that, and that becomes a constant. How do you manage that?
Yeah, I think in real life, things don't always happen as planned. You just have to have a plan B. I want to do this way. If it doesn't work this way, this is the next alternative, you know. And then sometimes when you are focused on something, you say, this is what I really want to do. I mean, any other distractions, you want to keep them aside. And then we're talking about being balanced in life. It's not only about the professional career. Life is not only about the profession. Back in Cameroon, of course, you know our program, we have all the funerals, we have the death celebrations, we have birthday parties. I mean, the fact that you're a career woman doesn't mean that you have no social life. You have to factor everything. For example, I planned my day of today. I already knew I had this program at 4 p.m. I went to my office. I closed by 3 p.m., drove straight home, and I said, okay, this is my next activity. There was nothing that could have kept me in the office beyond 3 p.m. because I had already taken this engagement. And I know what I will do after this show, you know. So for each day, you have the day's activities. Tomorrow, I have my day planned. I may go to church and say, okay, I'm going to be in church for 2 hours, and I end up being there 3 hours. But I now know how to schedule the rest of the activities. So when it doesn't go the way you plan, you just make the necessary adjustments and move on. Sometimes everything is not within your control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
Just quickly add to that. So, and by the way, you know, this philosophy Prax has about time is the same she has about money, right? You know, so she really gave great advice around planning how you spend your money. which again is something we don't talk about often enough. But what I wanted to add to, you raised a great question about what happens when things don't go according to plan. So just two things I want to say. So the first thing is, don't be too hard on yourself, right? A lot of times we judge ourselves very harshly, right? We hold ourselves, everybody holds us to a high standard. So we hold ourselves to a high standard. If you plan and things don't go well, I've seen very smart people just get down because they were working on something and it didn't work out, right? And they just get into a funk and it's down. So love yourself, right? Just accept that you're human, you're not perfect. Stuff is gonna happen. You deal with it. If you need to sit in it for some time and just, do an analysis and say, this is what I could have done differently, or this is what went wrong, that's fine. But if plans don't go according to plan, don't beat up yourself, love yourself, value yourself, so you can do others. And then the second thing is, maybe there's an opportunity there, right? Remember the saying, challenges, sometimes a challenge is actually an opportunity, right? So when you're going in a particular direction and something derails you, maybe God is pointing you in another direction, right? So maybe there might be an opportunity. Don't look at it. And of course, don't waste too much time. Don't get distracted, because all of us are susceptible to distraction. But always consider, if I had to have this meeting and I'm late for the meeting, or the car broke down and I couldn't get there on time, was there a reason, right? Is that maybe that's given me the opportunity? Maybe it was going to be a meeting where there would be 5 people. Can I follow up with the person I really wanted to meet and now have a one-on-one meeting with that person, right? Which may actually be of more value. So always remember, life is not perfect. Don't get depressed or completely thrown off your game if it doesn't go according to your plan. First of all, get back into your space, ground yourself, forgive yourself, even if it was your fault, right? If you missed a meeting because you overslept or whatever, forgive yourself, pick up yourself, and now say, how can I make the most of this?
So thank you very much. And let's focus now from the last part of this show on the KUA Women's Foundation. I know all of this ties into all the work that you have been doing. But I think at the beginning, you mentioned the fact of young women, the girls, okay? That is your emphasis. And you have a program, you have the Young Leaders Forum, the KUA Young Leaders Forum. What is that about?
Yeah, so we just started, because our demographic goes all the way from high school, university, and then young graduates as well. And obviously, as you can see, there's a huge gap. That's a wide range of the demographic. So when we had the seminar in February, I had the opportunity to meet this incredibly dynamic 14-year-old who she was one of the speakers, right? And she already had, how God just imbues some people with vision, just a lot of clarity around who girls can be, right? Teenage girls, who they can be. She's very involved in women's empowerment in Cameroon. For International Women's Day, her high school, she's at Government Bilingual High School in Dado. Her school actually invited her to speak to the female staff about women's empowerment and the importance of women finding their voice. And so we created the Young Leaders Forum, and there's going to be more to come. There are more programs that they're working on. We created the Young Leaders Forum, so we'll have the opportunity to find more of these young girls, teenage girls who already have a vision. So this year we had two honorees of our Young Leaders Award. So Brittany was one. This is the girl I'm telling you about, who already is doing fabulous things. And the other one was Abigail. She's this young, again, teenage girl who actually got admission into 3 Ivy League schools. And for her high school project, she went to Ghana to talk about feminism. Right, so imagine a high school girl from Massachusetts, Boston. She's a Cameroonian American. Grew up in this country, and she decides to get a project, get funding, go to Ghana for 3 weeks, work with boys and girls to really start talking about feminism and feminism in the culture. And she used Chimamanda Adichie's book that talks about feminism. So we're very, very fortunate within the KUA organization to sort of find this young, again, these are all girls who are teenagers who already have such a clear vision. Abigail already, she's going to study economics at Yale. She's studying at Yale this fall, and she chose to study economics because she wants to go back to Africa and work with women for economic empowerment. So there's really a lot of young girls out there who already have incredible potential, and that's what we're trying to do in our Young Leaders Forum. We're sort of trying to build a space And we have, again, like I said, already they're working on more programs to come where hopefully we find girls who are at this stage who already have a really clear vision about their experience as girls, both in Africa, but also in the diaspora, and how we can really start building leadership capability within this group.
It is amazing listening to you talk about the fact that there's a young girl who is 14-year-old, a 14-year-old girl who is able to address a conference, isn't it? These are, I mean, yes, for people who went to secondary school, Our Lady of Lourdes girls could do that confidently, isn't it? But the opportunities were not there. And so we have a different orientation to our kids, whereby such programs were able to get them, for teenagers, talking about their experiences and how they can move. You know, the change that we look for is change that we can begin effecting at this time. And that's why, I mean, Praxidis, I don't know what your experience is in Cameroon with teenagers always looking up to either the government to do something or parents to do something. Or, I mean, do you see the same kind of initiatives coming up? That 14-year-old girl, I think, is in Cameroon.
Correct.
How many of them?
Exactly.
How many do we have?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. In Cameroon, the scope is also changing. People are not everybody is not like waiting and looking up to the government. I think also with the information and communication technology that has exposed them to a lot, as we call them, the Android generation. I mean, they have so much exposure, they see so many things out there, and it gives them this push to make them realize that they can do so much. And like Lorraine said, we're so impressed by Brittany. She's already doing a lot. That's just one example. There are young girls out here in Cameroon who are able to do so much. And in this program, we also expect them now to serve as role models for their fellow youths. Because when a young girl of 14, 15, 13 sees another young girl of 14, what she is able to do, that spurs her on and makes her know that I can also do something like that. So the ultimate goal is to get more young girls to follow their example so that we have them in the leadership positions.
So again, that's one aspect of the Core Foundation, isn't it? The leadership aspect. You are trying to mold, coach, train young girls to get into that leadership. But I'm wondering, what is the capacity of the organization to be able to take this? Lorraine is here in the United States. You are in Douala and you are very busy. So how are you enhancing the capacity of the women to be able to achieve that?
Yeah, first of all, I think I mentioned the pace setters already, which has just been unbelievable to start an initiative and you have your classmates all rally behind you. They showed up, right? For the seminar, we had a full table. I think there were 11 of my classmates. Some came from Yaoundé to support, right? So we have that capacity. We have our classmates who've roped in their husbands to support us. But we also have other women, right? I don't want to start dropping names on here, but there are a lot of other women, unbelievable, in our mentoring program, on our committees, experts, right? I will just share the name of the chair of our awards committee, Dr. Maggie Kilo, someone who's had her whole career, worked for African Development Bank, taught at higher ENS, incredible expertise. And they step up and they're sharing this with COA. Right, as we're developing our awards program, the new award that we just launched, a lot of diligence because she's had experience in international finance, but also at higher education. So at COA, we are so blessed to have unbelievable people, men and women, who stepped up, lawyers, business owners who are part of, again, I don't sort of want to start calling people's names, but every program that we do, we have experts who volunteer their time. I think we'll continue. I'm not even thinking, I know we'll continue to grow because a lot of people believe in this vision, right? They see the gap. The mentees that we have in Cameroon are highly motivated. I have one of our mentees who reached out to me on LinkedIn, right, and said, I see that you're doing all of these things, what are you doing for Cameroon? So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of energy, incredible support, way beyond anything I could have ever imagined when we started this. But a lot of Cameroonians get it. A lot of Cameroonians want to develop our young girls. They just need, again, the structure, they need the framework, they sort of need the opportunity to be able to do this in a systematic way. So, and practice, again, practice right there on the ground. And I'm sure, perhaps we can share more.
Yeah, just like Lauren said, we have a lot of resources out there. There are so many people that we are leveraging on to achieve our goals. And just to come back to the COVID-19 project, it wasn't only the pace setter. Somewhere along the way, we had our senior lesson sister who was like, I'm so interested in this project, and she joined us all along the way. My mother joined us in the COVID-19 project. I mean, so there were just people around us who saw the project, they were so interested in it, and they joined us. So while the pace setters were doing it, we had other people who just volunteered and said, I like what you are doing and I want to be part of it. So we are also, as we are having different programs, we've had the seminar, we're having the mentorship program, we're having the young leadership. So various people are able to find where they fit in, where their own skills can be most appropriate, and they are offering those skills to let us work together. So we think that we have a lot of resources available.
So you touch on one of the most important for me. I mean, my classification of this is the mentorship program, because I believe that is one aspect that has been missing in that chain of our educational career, put it that way, isn't it? We all grew up, we had our heroes, people who we looked up to, but then we never had that connection even to get to see what they actually went through, isn't it? But then I think the gap that you guys are filling, I mean, that part of mentorship, so important, so critical in order to continue. And that word, again, I have 3 pages that I've written out today, isn't it? The one thing that Lorraine mentioned, pipeline, that there's a pipeline that is missing. But yet you have all these incredible, women, successful, and yet the other generation is saying, how can we be like you, and how can we connect? So let's talk about the mentorship program. How is it going? And more importantly, it's not what we are doing, but how people can become mentors themselves. How can people collaborate with the KUA Foundation to become mentors? Because I think it's a critical component of your project that we all need to get involved in.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Mentorship, as an element of development and growth, right? Both personal and professional growth is critical. I mean, if you think about how it used to be, there was this whole concept of apprenticeship, right? If you wanted to be, a blacksmith or a shoemaker, you spent time with a blacksmith. You had to, again, see somebody doing the job, right? And get to learn from that person. And so that's really the importance of mentorship. Unfortunately, we really don't have a lot of programs in Cameroon. And this generation of young women are actively asking for mentors. They have a lot of ideas. They're very motivated. But they also appreciate the fact that we would like to see models. We would like to see people who've been very successful. So at KUA, when we did the seminar in February, did a survey, huge number of people wanted mentors, right? And so it's very important for us to find people who want to be mentors, who are ready to commit. We have a structured program where you're able to interface with with your mentee and be able to provide them guidance. As I mentioned, Najila is one of our mentors, but I also wanted to cite, another really outstanding mentor because of a recent experience. So Dr. Emma Osong, who is, one of our Lesan big sisters, former president of Lesa USA. And, so Sister Emma, she's one of the mentors in our program, and she's mentoring this outstanding, incredible young woman who's based in Gaoundéré in Cameroon. And so, this girl, Paulette, she had a presentation. She was doing a conference presentation. And so, of course, she has interaction with her mentor, which I'm not, often privy to. And so the first time I hear of it is after she's done the presentations at this conference, very successful, very well done. So she writes this beautiful tribute to her mentor, and she says, I am so grateful. You spend time with me, help me work on my presentations. You're very busy. Anybody who knows Dr. Emma Hudson knows how busy she is. Another very cross-functional, high-power woman. But her mentee was so grateful and wrote this beautiful message and said, you made time for me, gave me feedback on my presentation. And that's what we love. That's what this is all about. Again, I think, Lambert, you mentioned it at the beginning, every problem is not about throwing money at the problem. A lot of times it's really finding what is the need. And again, how do you enable and empower people? And for us seeing that, it's very gratifying for someone to say, I had this in front of me. I needed to do this. And I had my mentor do this for me. And then she said, she also included in the note, she said, Dr. Lorraine, thank you for believing in me. So that's the other element, right? A lot of times young women just want to know that somebody sees their potential, somebody appreciates them, somebody sees them, somebody believes that their idea or what they're thinking, what they want to do has some value and just gives them a chance. So that's what our mentoring program is about. I know people worry about mentoring, is it going to take too much time? Are people going to be demanding? I will tell you, we're very selective of people who get into the mentoring program. We have, like I said, Paulette, who's a young graduate. She works for CAME. We have a medical student. We're very, very selective around. We make sure that there are girls who are motivated. They write a personal statement about why they want a mentor. And so if you become a mentor, I have been, I'm mentoring people, and it's always been extremely rewarding for me as a person, because you learn from your mentee. So for the people who are considering this, to mentor a young woman, and you can be male or female, right? You don't need to just be a woman. To mentor a young university student or a young graduate in Cameroon, absolutely, we would welcome your expertise, and we welcome your time, and we welcome your skills. So, Prat, did you want to say more to that? I know you get the opportunity for.
I think I was just going to share the experience of Paulette, which you already shared. And then to say that we are doing the mentoring in an era where we have all the facilities. The mentor can be located in any part of the world and the mentee in any other part of the world. Nothing stops the communication.
Yeah.
So again, I think if there's anything, and it's been a lot, I mean, we have been on for 1 hour, 15 minutes, we have 10 minutes to 2 hours. It's been a lot, packed, so much information. But I think the one takeaway for me is this mentorship program, okay? If there's one thing that you want to take away from this, it is that there's a group of women who are trying to impact the lives of other women, young girls, and there are different programs. But one of the most important programs for me is this mentorship. And if you are considering, please, if you want to be one, and I encourage every person watching, listening, or whatever you're doing, if you're a professional in any field and you want to be a mentor, you don't need to be a woman only, it could be a man. You want to mentor young girls in Cameroon, young women, anywhere, please reach out. I'm going to post right now. There are different ways in which you can reach KUA Foundation. Their Twitter handle, @KUA Women, Instagram, KUA_women, YouTube, KUA Women's Foundation, LinkedIn, KUA Women's Foundation. And if you go just to the YouTube page, it is amazing. The last presentation they had on there was 2 young girls who are talking about what? Believe in yourself and dream big. Yeah. These are teenagers. Yeah. You can't beat that. So I'm encouraging all. And let me put up the email. If you want to write to Dr. Lauren, you can use that KUA.foundation1@gmail.com.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So let me make sure I have it correct before. KUA.foundation1@gmail.com. I'm going to put that up.
Yeah.
So first, let me put up.
Oh, there you go.
Social media handles for KUA Foundation. You can look at all that. KUA Women, Instagram, you have that, YouTube. Take anyone and you'll be able to connect. But then if you want to be if you want to be a mentor, which is what I'm crying out for today, and I'm going to continue crying out on the Lambom Show every time I come up. And when Dr. Lauren has had enough, I don't know what I can have, you can never have enough, then she will say stop. KUA Foundation, KUA.foundation1@gmail.com. Now, there's something before Dr. Lauren, it just struck me here that is KUA Foundation an extension of Lesser National, Lesser Global or something? Is it just for lessons, or there are other women who could become members of KUA Foundation?
No, it's not tied to Lesser at all. It's an independent nonprofit. Registered in New Jersey, actually, right? So I wanted to make sure, because we're interested in Cameroonians in the diaspora as well. Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that I know a lot of the examples I cited were lesson. So we're very fortunate that, you know, I get a ton of support from expert lessons. Like I said, like someone like Sister Emma, Dr. Emma, and Yamagi. But we also have men, right? You know, Michael Boye is on one of our committees. You know, we have other men we have men on our board. So it's not an extension of Lesa. The vision, again, like I said, is that we really want to enable and empower women and help to build a pipeline, you know, professionally, but also personally, but most especially in these areas of science, of business, and of leadership. We really want to be able to get people confident. And I love that you quoted the video of Stacy and Casey, the two teenage girls who we had asked them to do a video message for their message, to give us a message for young girls. And the message is for adults, right? I mean, teenagers are telling us, believe in yourself, know what you want, dream big. That is for everybody, right? So we have this incredible, we're finding, I mean, this is just, it's such a joy doing this, Lambert, because we just find unbelievable. It's like being, you know, stimulated every single day with just the incredible potential of our girls and young women. So
I'm just happy I had to, bring that in so that people don't think that this is some bias we have. Again, it's open to everybody, you know, so that it's for every young girl. I mean, so let's maybe get down. There's something that you mentioned, and I'm curious. You want to encourage young girls and women, and you talk about STEM, isn't it? Science, technology, engineering, and math. But you put in brackets science. Why are you focusing on the S in the STEM?
Well, no, so it's all encompassing, right? Okay. That's actually a really great question for me to bridge one of our key programs that we just launched yesterday. You know, so when we say science as well as STEM, it's just to make sure that, because a lot of times when people hear STEM, the first thinking is technology, right? A lot of STEM efforts, in all fairness, today are focused on IT. Usually when people think about STEM, they think about computing, they think about coding. If you look at a lot of the funding for STEM, for women, it's really around, the overwhelming majority is around computer science and digital technology. So we do call out science a little bit because we also want to make sure that we're supporting the basic fundamental sciences. If you want to be a neurologist, you know, you don't think about STEM right away, right? So you often think of yourself as a scientist. And so that's why we call out, you know, the science a little bit more, to really let people know that it goes all the way. If you want to be a microbiologist, if you want to be a biochemist, you know, even if it's very basic fundamental science, if you want to study muscle contractions, right? If you want to study something that is just a very, very specific field, that goes just beyond what we think about STEM, because a lot of times with STEM, people see the technology and the engineering very, very clearly, and that's really where a lot of the funding focus is today. And so that's why with KUA, we really try to sort of call that out, and then also call out the business and leadership part, because again, remember I said, we want to develop women who are strong scientists, but we also want them to be the one leading the lab, right? We want you to be in management roles. We want you to sort of be able to grow in your career as well.
So, Praxidis, again, the science, the technology, the engineering, I'm sure the business part. Let's talk about that part, because that's where your expertise kind of. Most women really want to get into business, and all they're thinking about business is, okay, let me buy a few things here and all that. I mean, what is your advice to a young girl who wants to get into business? I know you already talked about it at the beginning in terms of when you're thinking about it, it's not good going to be limiting yourself to the marketing part, isn't it? Actually getting into something like accounting. But for a young girl who is listening to you and trying to navigate a career path, what would be your advice to the person?
Yeah, I think when we talk about business, it's a very wide domain, and if I may come back to it, I'll say it is a business science, because everything is about the science. You know, it's not just here. Generally in Cameroon, they say somebody is a business person. You are like he's buying and selling. You know, but business is about so many domains. Business extends to information and communication technology. If you are running a shop where you are selling technological equipment, phones, and all that, you are still in the business domain. But I want to look at, you know, when they say business, you have finance. A lot of people are like, okay, banking and finance. There is banking. There is a wide range of domains as far as business is concerned. When you say a business school, it is in this business school that you are doing human resource management, you are doing project management, and it's accounting, marketing, and everything else you can list. So it is a fairly wide domain. And just like Lorraine said, it's not about when you are into business, it is not an exclusive. It's not an exclusive domain, you know. I mean, some of the things I'm able to do even in my field is because of the background that I have in the sciences. For example, if somebody is taking a loan for an agricultural project, if I get to the business side, based on my scientific knowledge in agriculture, I'm able to do certain analysis that somebody without a background in science will not do, you know. So business is about so many, it is a very wide domain. And talking about when people go for careers, I always say, follow your passion. Look for what you are passionate about. And when you do that, you realize that you enjoy your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, Lambert, I think that ties back into the discussion I love the example Prax gave about like her agribusiness background today. So it goes back to what the discussion we had about being cross-functional again, right? Because we often think about all of these pieces as completely separate, right? And that's why, again, in the organization, we decided to have science, business, and leadership because they're not separate, right? You know, as you go across your career, you're going to discover that you have to leverage pieces, and actually we also have another really great video on our YouTube and also our Facebook from Dr. Eunice Gwan-Messia, who is a nurse and now she wants to be CEO of a business. Really great example. She talks about her career journey and how she leverages every little part of what she learned to be where she is today. So they're really not disconnected. And I just wanted to again kind of bridge this to the one of our key programs that we have, which is the program we launched yesterday, our Lightbearer Awards, where we're looking at providing funding, to girls in Cameroon, either for research projects. If you're a university student, you can get up to 500,000 francs CFA, or if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business and you're trying to get a project off of the ground. So we're not funding startups, right? Again, I always say we're very focused. There's organizations that fund startups. We're not a VC. We're not investors today. And there's a project. If you wanted to do an expansion or you wanted to do something to grow your business, we can give you up to 500,000 francs CFA. Or if you have a project, but it has to be a project, application process. You have to do a business plan, do a project proposal, and show us how it is going to be impactful in Cameroon. So that's the Lightbearer Award. We just launched that yesterday. The forms are on the website. But again, it ties into the fact that, to your key takeaways, mentoring is number one. The second one is this Biniba Lightbearer Awards, which is actually named after my mom. But
I was just going to ask you because I saw the Biniba and I'm wondering why Biniba, and thank God it's your mom. It could not be. I'm wondering why your dad had so much impact and you're naming an award after your mother. But hey, we'll keep that conversation for a different day. So, I mean, girls, women in Cameroon, entrepreneurs who are looking for opportunities, if you have a project and you need funding for it, hey, here you are. The KUA Foundation is knocking. But it's not just going to be one of those projects where you call and say that I want to have cassava grill somewhere. No, it has to be, you need the scientific aspect of it, isn't it? You write it out in a way that everybody understands. Okay. So where would they find information about it? Again, on the KUA Women's Foundation website. I'll bring that back so that if you want information about it, go to this site, KUAWomen'sFoundation.org. So for the remainder of the time, which is no time left, let us ask any last words. Praxidis, I'm so grateful you were able to sit through this for 2 hours. I am very grateful. I'm thankful that you are my first guest from Cameroon on this show. And I'm hoping that you will come back. I see I've become friends with many pace setters. One of your friends, the one who has been on the show from the beginning till now.
And she was at the seminar. Esther came all the way from Bamenda.
From Bamenda.
So that's who we are, right? She came all the way from Bamenda to Douala for the seminar, and she's always riding with us, right? So that's how we roll.
I want to thank all of them. Esther says, Lambert, thank you for promoting Kua Women's Foundation by giving our sisters time on your platform. I am instead thanking them for sharing their time with me, with us, with all of you. And I'm hoping that through this initiative, we no longer have an excuse for why girls in our country, young girls, young women, okay, do not reach the levels where we all are expecting each other to, because there are opportunities, isn't it? Opportunities. And Kua Foundation is one. That is why we spent 2 hours of our time on a Saturday talking about this, because it is very, very important. I did not want to get into any gender issues, because people have been asking in the background, you are talking only about women, how about men? I'll say that let a man form a foundation like Kua Foundation too, then we'll talk about the men, isn't it? But this is not just for women, because once you are able to take even just one woman and empower the woman, you are able to empower everybody around. I like the way Praxidis said it in the beginning when she was talking about the COVID, isn't it? The woman, when you give it to the woman, it goes to the family, isn't it? Very great. And that is why I want to applaud this particular initiative. And I'm going to be on it to make sure that Kua Foundation gets to where it is supposed to be. So let's listen to your last words, Praxidis, first.
Okay, thank you so much, Lambert. I'm also very thankful that the network connection made it possible for me to stay on all through. I was wondering if it was going to be collaborative, but we thank God for that. And my closing word, I will share what I had as my key message during the seminar in June, which comes from my finance background. I say, cut your coat according to your cloth. I don't know whether it's pidgin, whether it's English, but the idea is live within your means. Don't try to go beyond what you can afford, which we go further to say, if your cloth is smaller, choose a design that uses less material. So always cut your coat according to your cloth. That's my passing message.
So those of us who do not have cloth, we are dead. I get your message again from the finance from a finance expert. You can get that background, isn't it? Cut your coat according to your cloth, not according to your size. Yeah. Because if you have a big tummy like me, but if the material is small, then you have to bear it, isn't it? So again, Praxidis, I want to say thank you, and I'm sure anytime I'll knock on your door, you'll be open to. And I think we need a lesson, a special session just on finances. So let us work on that. Yeah. Dr. Lauren, again, I said from the beginning, this has been my greatest mentor without knowing that she's mentoring me in my own field. I am very, very grateful, much obliged. I can't say enough. Dr. Lauren has been very gracious. She's been able to help me put together panels at the last minute, making sure that everything is working. And she has taught me a lot about structure. I keep saying it because for somebody like me who's a free rider, I go with the flow. But structure has been very important. And I want to say congratulations on the Kua Foundation. Whatever Kua Women's Foundation, let me make sure I pronounce that, call that out correctly. Women are the pillars of the community. Women are mothers. And so once you're able to focus and build on women, we'll build our community better. And as a man, I said it at the beginning, a father, okay, of 2 girls, beautiful girls, a husband, okay, and a brother, and a son of a woman. I forgot to say this, that my mother has been my greatest support, isn't it? My father, may he be in peace, loved my sisters very much and did everything and would do anything for them, but never forgot about me because I was his first son, isn't it? So that was great. But my mother is the one who always carried me and carries me even till today. At my age, you will not believe what my mother does to me on a daily basis. And I really want to take this opportunity to say, listening to you reminds me of the help that my mother has been to me together with my dad, without taking away from the Kua Women's Foundation. Founder, Dr. Lauren Niba. Closing remarks.
Oh, thank you, Lambert. And I want to say, as always, pace setters set the pace, right? So for you to have the first guest from Cameroon and for it to be a pace setter, so let's not forget that. But I really want to thank you, Lambert, because you're using your platform probably even in a way that you never envisioned, right? So thank you for using it to really spotlight and amplify things that can bring change to our community. both in Cameroon and here in the diaspora. And what I want to share with everybody is that African girls and women have incredible potential that is often not understood, right? The vision people have of African women is that is the girl child who's suffering and there's hopelessness and and the starving, and it's all this negative energy. And it is true, right? There's still child marriage, there's structural issues, there's still decisions, there's families where if they don't have enough money, the boy will go to school before the girl. There's all of that. But we also have this huge component of young women and girls who motivate me. I've cited some examples on here. Going to Cameroon and doing the seminar, I was more energized than anybody else. We have dynamic women. They're not sitting and waiting for anybody. All they need is an enabler and an empower, somebody to just empower them and enable and, just give them a little bit, right? Give them a hand up because they're very energized. They're very motivated. This generation, right? Africa 2.0 is very transformational. And it's not just women. I know there's men as well. So for the people who ask the question, a lot of our video messages, all of our messaging, I share it with my, all the men in my life, my brothers, everybody, because they're very empowering, for everybody. So, so this generation, let's invest in them. And investment is not just money. Hopefully you've taken away, we do have a Lightbearer Award, which is a financial award because you need money to be able to do things, to do projects, to expand a business. But there's also mentoring. There's also being a role model. There's also messaging. There are so many ways in which you can be a light to a young woman. And a lot of them are there. They have all these innate qualities. They have potential. They're very aware of it. They know what they want to do. I get ideas all the time. They're very clear in what they want to do. And all they want to know is that those of us who have gone before them and we've had opportunities, do we see them? Do we hear them? Do we support them? And that's what KUA is trying to do. So you've heard me say this before. I cannot believe how fortunate I am and how grateful for the people who offer their time, right? And their expertise. Everybody who is part of KUA, people travel to come to events. People take time off on the weekend to work on projects. But even the people who are, on committees, they bring their professional expertise. So when you access our application forms, our project proposal form was developed by a vice president in a financial institution. Our business plan was developed by a professional. So people are literally bringing their expertise to help uplift our women. So if you can be a mentor, if you want to advocate, even if you cannot join us, if you can just be a positive space in your personal life, if you're a dad, encourage your daughters. If you're a woman, encourage other women, encourage other girls, push people, right? Encourage people, be a good role model, because there's huge potential among our Cameroonian girls, both in Cameroon and here in the diaspora. And we have a huge opportunity to uplift them and to really, really make change and to make impact. So I'm just infinitely grateful to everybody, all of our supporters, all of our followers on all of our platforms. Everybody watching today, we're very, very grateful because we're doing something that there is a need for. People have been very supportive of the vision. And I'm very, very optimistic that we'll continue. It's been very rewarding and very fulfilling, and we'll continue to do that and to bring change. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the presence of one of my best friends, Vivian Bangui. He says, congratulations, women. Thank you, Lambert. Thank you, Vivian. Stephen Angafo, my friend from the UK, Women Empowerment, Way Forward, thumbs up to the crew. Vivian, when you empower a woman, you have directly empowered the community. Great job. Aloysius Fru, African women are still marginalized today. Thanks for putting them on the stage today.
Oh.
Steve, I love the honesty about Nambom. That's my mother. She's to you what Monica was to her son, Augustine. I'll take that even though you're abusing me there, but that's cool. But again,
but it ended well. It ended well for Augustine.
Yeah, right. So again, I just want to say we can women's empowerment is something that we can talk about from today till the day after tomorrow. But then this has been very specific, and in areas where we have not had women empowered, isn't it? STEM, okay, business, leadership. And this crew is all about empowerment, enabling. KUA means to enable, to empower. And so we empower ourselves by empowering our women, isn't it? And so we will do everything. If you are looking for a way of reaching the KUA Women's Foundation, you can go onto their website, https://KUAWomensFoundation.org, on Twitter @KUA Women, Instagram KUA_women, YouTube KUA Women's Foundation, LinkedIn KUA Women's Foundation. So there's no excuse. And if for any reason you cannot reach any of those, you can always come back on my platform, Lambom Show, Lambom Vuvuzela. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on YouTube. Reach out to me. Lauren is always going to take my call. So again, thank you all for spending your Saturday and wish you all the best. Tomorrow, I'll be hosting the Southern Cameroon's Medical Society, doctors talking about vaccines. On Monday, we'll be talking about children and mental health. Until then, it's been a wonderful Saturday. I wish you the best. Enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everybody.